On this video, we'll preview the NBA draft, give you everything you need to know, and end it with some bold predictions. I'm Alan Seslowsky, here with Nick Whalen from Rotowire. Who are the top 5 consensus picks, and is there a favorite to go number 1?
I would say we have a consensus top 4, and that's Cade Cunningham, who's widely expected to go number 1 to Detroit on Thursday night. At the DraftKings Sportsbook, he's minus 8,000 to be the number 1 pick. So everyone's expecting that to be Cade Cunningham. Then you have Jalen Green and Evan Mobley. They're kind of battling for those second and third picks. Green seems to have the slight edge, but it's mostly a matter of preference. Then you have Jalen Suggs, point guard at Gonzaga, essentially on his own tier. At this point, it would be somewhat of a surprise if he went 2 or 3, and it would also be a surprise if he went 5 or lower. He kind of seems locked in to that 4 spot right now. We'll see what happens on draft night, but Jalen Suggs to the Toronto Raptors, certainly a very intriguing possibility if he does go number 4.
How does Cunningham compare to other elite prospects in the past, like Zion and Kevin Durant or Luka?
You know, I don't think he's quite on that tier. I think he's the rightful number 1 prospect in this draft, and it's actually relatively rare that he's been the wire-to-wire guy since before he even arrived at Oklahoma State. You know, more often than not, you'll have a guy, think back to Jahlil Okafor when he was at Duke. Everyone thought he was going to be the number 1 pick, and by the time the college season was over, Karl Anthony Towns had essentially surpassed him, and Okafor, I think, fell to number 3 in that draft. So it's relatively rare for a guy like Cunningham to hold that spot all the way through. With that said, I don't think he has quite that, potential best player in the league type of ceiling that we've seen from guys like Zion Williamson, Anthony Davis, certainly LeBron James, even someone like Kevin Durant, who went number 2 in his draft. I think Cade Cunningham has by far the highest floor of the elite prospects. The question is, where is his ceiling? He's kind of that Luka Doncic type of player where you want to run everything through him. He does everything well. He has great size, but he's not a great athlete. And I'm not quite sure that he's like that next level wizard-like passer. He's a very good passer. The question is he a great enough passer that it mitigates that lack of athleticism, and he can be that do-it-all guy who eventually at his peak is giving you something like 25, 8, and 8 every single night.
Who's Cade Cunningham's best modern-day comp?
Man, Doncic is the name that you hear most often. Obviously, that's the best case scenario for Cade Cunningham. I think that's where you draw the parallels in terms of not being a fantastic athlete, but being able to do pretty much everything well. I mean, you could argue that Cade Cunningham's a better shooter than Luka Doncic at the time that they came into the NBA. And even right now, for as great of an explosive scorer as Doncic is, he's kind of a mid-30s three-point shooter, whereas Cade Cunningham shot 40% at Oklahoma State this past year.
Detroit, Houston, and Cleveland own the number 1, 2, and 3 picks respectively. Are any of them trade down candidates, and who would be trading up?
I think all 3 of these teams probably stand pat just because of the caliber of prospects that we're talking about. And I don't think any of these teams want to miss out on Cunningham or Green or Mobley. Even Cleveland, which has, for a bad team, kind of a packed roster right now. You have 2 recent lottery picks at guard. You still have Kevin Love. You have Jared Allen in the front court. And then you have another recent lottery pick in Isaac Okoro at the 3. But, if Evan Mobley is sitting there, I don't think you could pass up on him. He's one of those players that even if you have guys at that position already, you just make it work. You take the talent and you figure that out later. So I don't think those teams, want to trade out of the top 3. If you're talking about a team that wants to get into that range, I think it's the Oklahoma City Thunder, who currently hold the number 6 pick. I think they're a team that would love to get their hands on a local product in Cade Cunningham. But for one, Detroit probably doesn't want to move off that number 1 spot. And if they do, I mean, it would take a motherload of a trade offer. We're talking probably multiple future first-round picks, potentially, another young player who they would ask for. The bottom line is that Detroit's not trying to trade the number 1 pick. So if you're going to convince them to do so, you have to absolutely blow them away, with a mega offer.
Any superstar players that could be traded on draft night?
I mean, there's an outside chance that we could see a Damian Lillard or a Bradley Beal deal. I think those, if they happen, are probably deals that occur, closer to the start of the regular season, maybe at the trade deadline. Lillard obviously is over in Tokyo right now, so there probably hasn't been a ton of back and forth from his camp and the Portland Trailblazers during draft week. So it'd be relatively surprising if either of those guys are moved. But, if you're talking trades that involve draft picks, more often than not, the teams that are going to be receiving those draft picks want to make the picks themselves. So, Golden State has number 7 and number 14. If they want to try to flip those picks to acquire someone like a Bradley Beal, Washington would prefer to make those picks themselves. Golden State can take someone at 7, they could take someone at 14, they could trade those 2 players later, but those may not be the guys that the team receiving them ultimately would have taken. So it complicates things for that trade to happen later.
It's rare to have a team pick in the top 5 that's a better than average or even a playoff caliber team. Toronto Raptors pick at number 4.
Toronto's in a really great spot. They're kind of playing with house money here. They're only 2 years removed from winning the NBA title. So that's still, fresh in the minds of fans. The organization now has a much longer runway to play with, and they could go either direction. They could kind of do a rebuild on the fly around their young core, or they could try to trade this pick and add more of a win now piece and try to compete a little bit sooner than some expect. But I expect them to make this pick. I think if Jalen Suggs is sitting there at number 4, it's such a perfect fit. I think he is maybe the second most NBA ready guy when you talk about those 4 elite prospects behind Cunningham. I think Mobley and Green have higher long-term ceilings, but what we saw from Suggs last year at Gonzaga, he did not look like a freshman whatsoever. He played more like a junior or a senior in college, which is extremely impressive for an 18, 19-year-old kid.
Every year, there's a player that's picked outside of the lottery that ends up being an NBA All-Star. Who are some of the players in the mid to late round that you think have that type of upside?
Jared Butler at Baylor, maybe not all-star upside, but just the classic, great college player who a lot of people sleep on. He'll probably go 5 to 10 spots lower than he should. Jalen Johnson at Duke is a very polarizing player, one of the most polarizing guys in this draft. Top 10 recruit coming out of the state of Wisconsin, had a great start to the year at Duke, some huge stat lines early in the year. And obviously Duke's season went south very quickly. He ends up leaving the team, took a lot of flack for quote unquote quitting on that team. But there are a lot of factors that went into this college basketball season. And I don't really hold that against Jalen Johnson. So I think if a team is able to get him in the mid-20s, maybe even the late 20s, it's very rare to find a player with that kind of physical profile, that kind of upside, that late in the first round.
Who's the safest player in this entire draft?
Man, I think the cop-out answer is probably Cunningham. At worst, you're probably looking at a guy who's a well above average point guard / wing in this league.
Who's a swing for the fences pick? Who has the highest upside but still has a lot of bust potential?
I think Jonathan Kuminga is the name that most people would bring up. Kuminga and Jalen Suggs were kind of fighting for that 4 or 5 spot. Now you're starting to see some executives, some scouts sour a little bit on Jonathan Kuminga, who's a physical freak, kind of a Kawhi Leonard type of body, Paul George type of body, really physical, really strong for his age, really athletic, but some questions about his work ethic, some questions about his polish. But when you look at the physical profile, it's one of those situations where, if this guy's jump shot comes around, if everything comes together, you talk about a player who has top 5, top 10 player in the entire league type of upside. Kuminga is on that list, but it could also go the other way, and he could be out of the league in 4 or 5 years, and I don't think anyone would be that shocked.
We're now going to give you Nick Whalen's top 3 bold predictions for the NBA draft. Nick, what's bold prediction number 3?
I think Corey Kispert at Gonzaga ends up in Golden State.
Bold prediction number 2.
I think Cam Thomas at LSU is this year's Sadiq Bey, and he may even have a higher ceiling.
And your number 1 bold prediction for the 2021 NBA draft?
I'm going back to Jalen Suggs. I think he is an NBA All-Star by year 3.
To see Nick Whalen's article, click the video link in the description below and get all of Rotowire's projections, rankings, and mock drafts and podcasts for free. Try Rotowire today, free for 10 days. Get our premium tools, rankings, analysis, and breaking news alerts. No credit card required. Go to rotowire.com/try.